because that's how humans are sometimes. Humans are sometimes asexual. That's just how it be sometimes. Hello lovely humans, welcome to this space on the internet. Guess what? Today is the last day of ACE Week. Woohoo! This year's ACE Week's theme was Beyond Awareness. So I thought for the last day of ACE Week that I would talk about one aspect of ACE activism that's not awareness that I think is really important, and that is education. And yes, I am aware that awareness and education are very similar things. However, I think that the primary difference and what they're getting at by calling this year's ACE Week Beyond Awareness themed is that awareness is very passive, whereas something like education is very active. Education is a more concrete form of awareness and will more directly contribute to the decisions and knowledge of those who have been educated. Because we all know that the best way to infiltrate a system is to hijack the education. If we're teaching our kids whatever we're teaching them, they're going to grow up and establish a system that revolves around what they were taught when their brains were small and malleable. So here's why asexuality should be taught in schools. Reason number one, the most obvious. Asexuality should be taught in schools to normalize asexuality, aspec identities, and experiences. Because if it's something that everybody's just taught about as a standard, there's nothing weird about it. It eliminates the alienation associated with being ace. If it's something that everybody knows about, there's no reason for it to be treated as a foreign concept. This ideally would allow for aces to feel more comfortable being openly ace, because it eliminates any form of othering that they may experience from peer groups. Once a queer educator came into my health class and mentioned the term asexuality, which actually spawned a lot of questions amongst my classmates, and very few people had actually heard the term before. So this educator was explaining it, and people seemed quite fascinated by the concept of not liking anybody sexually. But they were very curious. I remember one person anonymously asked a question. They were asking, oh, my sibling, they haven't shown any interest in romantic or sexual topics whenever they come up. Could they possibly be asexual? I think that's one example of how having that education in the classroom allowed for someone to recognize the experience of someone who maybe not, but maybe on the asexual spectrum. It normalized the concept to them to a point where they could very easily accept, hey, maybe my sibling is ace. Normalizing asexuality through education would also potentially serve as harm reduction, as people would more likely be able to explore their identity and what it means for them healthily and safely, as opposed to unsafely in ways such as substance abuse, to deal with emotions that you don't know how to deal with, or forcing yourself into relationships, or trying to force yourself to feel things that you don't feel. Reason number two why asexuality should be taught in schools. It would potentially introduce the idea of different relationship types. So, personal opinion here, teaching young people about forming meaningful relationships is really important. I say personal opinion, but I think it's the correct opinion, especially when you get to the high school range of these kids being about to go off and try an adult. Of course they're going to want people to help them out. That's the idea that I get. So I think including exercises and lessons to do with different relationship types, such as queer platonic relationship types, or romantic but non-sexual, or polyamorous relationships, would benefit everyone and not just asexual people. Knowing that there's a lot of different ways to exist in the world among other humans is really cool, and will allow people to make better decisions as to how they go about their interpersonal life. And I know this isn't necessarily ACE education, but it is education that addresses issues that disproportionately affect ACE people, such as loneliness, unhealthy relationships, and amatonormativity. Reason number three, to include ACE education in schools, to allow ACE kids a spot to be ACE outside of the internet. So the internet is a fantastic place for ACEs, often because it's the only place they can find any other ACEs, since, we're only 1%, which I actually think is a lie, but we're gonna run with it. The internet may be the only place aces feel that their identity is properly acknowledged and accepted. And I'm so glad we have this internet platform. So glad. It has probably saved numerous lives. However, there's probably, almost certainly, a reason that aces have to limit themselves to the internet in order to feel valid within their asexuality. Because nobody around them knows what asexuality is. They don't. There is no asexuality around them. There's none. There probably is some, but how would they know if nobody told them? Aces will often feel alone in the physical world compared to the digital world. And how do we fix that? By teaching young people, the fresh, malleable youngling brains about asexuality, and to thus create more space for aces outside of the digital world in, the physical realm of existence. I know I'm one to talk. Welcome to my digital ace space. I do have a fairly significant network of aces in my life outside of the internet, so I am not quite a hypocrite, but I think that including it in schools would be extra cool because I know like 7 aces or something in my school alone. Like, they're out there, people. And reason number 4 is to help ace kids feel seen and to acknowledge ace history. This one's also pretty obvious, but I think worthy of mention. So I was at my school's SAGA meeting, Sexuality and Gender Alliance, and the entire group agreed that they would like to see more queer topics and lessons integrated into their school curriculum. Why would they want that, actually? And why would they want to see more queer representation in their education? Because, of course, we want to learn about people whose experiences resemble our own. It's validating and it's interesting because we're cool. Aces and queer people are cool. And when that material is accessible, such as within a classroom, it makes for a better representation of, humanity within our education process. In the same way we want to acknowledge other minorities, we want to acknowledge queer people and aces within our curriculum because that's how humans are sometimes. Humans are sometimes asexual. That's just how it be sometimes. And when ace kids are gonna see that, it might just be a little snippet of queer history or a little snippet of queer education. It's like, hey, yeah, right, I exist. Forgot about that. But yeah, it's validating and it's interesting. And we like learning about people like ourselves. So those were 4 reasons. I know that's not very many, but those were some reasons as to why I believe we should incorporate asexuality, at least to some extent, in our education systems and curriculum. That's why we should teach asexuality in schools. Before leaving you to go about your day, I want to mention that I recognize that my ideas about implementing ace education into school systems are mostly applicable to Western and American systems. I don't know everything about everywhere in the world. It'd be cool, but I don't. And there's going to be a lot of different ways that asexuality can be incorporated, and sometimes it won't be able to be, but I've hoped for a day where school's everywhere. Well, first of all, let's get everybody in school, number 1. Then let's teach them all the basics. And then let's open them up to the world of asexuality. My point being that I know my ideas are limited to the systems of the Western world. So happy Ace Week, my dear aces. Go hug an asexual that you love if they like being hugged and are into that. And if you happen to be an educator, try and, normalize asexuality within your learning atmosphere. That would be greatly appreciated. Love you all. Thank you for visiting this space on the internet. Bye!